Okay, New Testament readers, it is week 52. This is our last week, though it's a kind of a bonus week. It's got 8 days in it if you're on schedule. But this is going to take us to the end of our journey of reading through the New Testament. So Revelation is going to move to its climax and its conclusion, and the New Testament along with it. Remember, this book has been using vivid figurative language, which is drawn from Israel's scriptures and from the world of the first century. It's using this to depict the lives of God's people in the world, that they are suffering, but they are sustained and ultimately victorious because of the Lamb who was slain, who is the Lion of Judah. All of this leads to Christ's return to rule over the world, his destruction of the enemies of God, the fullness of God's rule over the world, the resurrection of the dead, heaven coming to earth. So, this week's readings begin with chapter 14, where we see an image of judgment on the earth while God's people are safe and secure gathered around the throne. They're not marked by the mark of the beast. They don't belong to his people. They belong to God. Angels announce the final defeat of God's enemies, and we're told here is a call for the endurance of the saints, those who keep the commandments of God and their faith in Jesus. This idea of endurance is just all through the book of Revelation. So a harvest begins. Grapes are put into the winepress, a representation of the judgment on God's enemies. We may remember a line from this passage which is used in the Battle Hymn of the Republic from the Civil War. Well, in chapters 15 and 16, there are 7 angels with 7 bowls which bring plagues like the plagues of Egypt onto the world. And notice how often just any and all worldly empires are destroyed in a way that reminds us of Egypt, of Babylon, that would have told the early Christians of Rome. These images are transferable because there's an essential conflict running through the whole book. So this is utter defeat and destruction for God's enemies. In chapter 17, God's enemies are depicted as a great prostitute who is called Babylon. Babylon, the city that takes the people of God captive, an ally of the beast, making war on God and seeming to dominate the world. Again, we have this reminder that the powers of worldliness and evil seem to dominate, but God ultimately defeats them. God ultimately rules. So in chapter 18, Babylon falls and is mocked and lamented. The wealth and power that it had didn't matter. God's people who had been martyred are now vindicated. And so in chapter 19, God is praised, and there's the wedding feast of the Lamb is announced, but ironically, this is when the Lord returns, Jesus returns as a mighty warrior, his enemies are defeated, and their flesh is eaten by carrion-eating birds. So a tremendously ironic and even sardonic image there, but again, suggesting complete defeat for God's enemies. We get a penultimate, next to the last image of victory. In chapter 20, Satan is bound for 1,000 years. And then, oddly, he's let loose for a short period of time, but immediately defeated. I think we need to step back from this image, just as we did with the image of the 2 witnesses back in chapter 10, who prevail and then they're defeated. We see these are 2 sides of the same coin. You know, this is what life in the world is. Satan is bound, but he remains active and is a threat. But the bigger picture here, the 1,000-year picture, as opposed to the little season picture, is that the Lord reigns and Satan is bound. And to make sure that we understand that, at the end of this short story, Satan is defeated a second time. And so this brings us to the finality of chapters 21 and 22. The end is like the beginning. We are in Eden again. We are in the New Jerusalem, a city with walls, but they're always open because it's always safe. There's a river, a tree of life. God is with his people. Light and life come from God. The sea, which was for Israel a threat, is gone. There is no threat now. Everything is pure. We see God face to face and the Lamb face to face as God sits on his throne. The leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. Maybe my favorite image from this entire book. So what is the exhortation? Remain faithful. Jesus will vindicate his people, but the invitation to belong to his people remains open. All right, What have you received from your reading in this program? Feel free to drop us a line and let us know. We would love to hear from you about that. What difference has it made for you? I suspect there are some. Even if we haven't done everything that we wanted to do, we have gained a lot from this experience, haven't we? And look for suggestions on how we can keep this habit of reading that we've been developing, how we can maintain it in the year to come. There are lots of ways to do that. We're going to kind of set out on adventures of our own as we go forward. All right, let me say it one last time. Happy reading.